Hey, welcome guys. I got my nice cup of coffee. Pow. Have a sip. Let's get down to it. Today we're going to be going through the mix processing for my new single Temptation. I've got 4 basic buses going on here. My drum bus, bass bus, instrumentation bus, that's all my melodic elements. And of course we've got the vocal bus. But before I start, I just want to give you a quick rundown that I mix. This is a pre-master, so everything is mixed at 48,000 sample rate. I've got about 6.5 dB of headroom. Then the pre-master went off to my mastering engineer, Santiago Estrado in Guatemala City. He does a bang-on job. I like having someone else's ears as well to take what I've done and just take it to the next level. And Santiago deals with lots of EDM, techno, dance, lots of electronic music. And so it's nice to have his ears just tweak my tune to a whole new level. The other thing is I don't have any mid-side EQ done. I haven't cut my sides at like 200 hertz. I let him do all of that because my main thing is to make sure I'm filling up the entire frequency spectrum, that I'm getting a really good clean mix where everything pops out nicely in the 200 hertz up to 4.5K. I want my mid-range, my low mids, my main mids and my upper mids to be crisp. I want every element to cut through, including my kick and my bass. Yeah. I also think I'll start this with my master channel processing so you can see what I've got happening on that before we dive into the separate track components. That way at least you have an understanding of what processing is happening on each of these individual tracks within the stems. It just helps, I think, to know that. So let's get into the master channel, shall we? So as you can see, my first plugin is the Q3 on the master bus, on the master channel right over here. My Pro Q3 I keep here just to ensure that I'm getting a good frequency response, that all the frequencies are covered in the mix.
The best temptation will lead me astray.
I like that because I use Pro Q3 a lot. It's actually on most of my individual tracks as well, just so I can see where I have masking issues and I can address that to allow each of the components to pop through, to cut through the mix. My next two, which I'm actually turning off, I have one with a side chain to the low frequencies for my kick. That's the first one, this guy over here. And then the second one is side chain to all the other frequencies. So I address my sub first, my kick and my bass. I just make sure I've got that set to, as you can see here, it's 2.8 ratio. I have the attack pretty slow just to allow the transients to cut through. And I got the threshold pretty low as well. And then on the remaining frequencies above 166, I have a slightly less ratio with a slightly higher threshold, also a little bit of a faster attack and a little bit of a slower release. So yeah, those are off. I usually turn those guys on once I've got all my balancing and my leveling set, when I'm happy with the mix, and then that's the last thing I'll do is turn on the Pro C2s and just do a little compression just to glue the track together. But we'll talk about that at the end. I'll turn that on and we can hear the difference. So let's get rid of those. The next one I have on my master chain is my Soothe 2, which is just to catch any resonant frequencies that I wasn't able to address in the mix. I do like some resonant frequencies to come through, which is why I put the soothe after my compression, because I want to capture, particularly with this track that has a very raw element to it in the guitars, I want to capture that and compress that, and then afterwards I address the soothe, so I still at least get some of that crunchy compression on the sound. The default is 3, but the depth here is 3.1, and I just have it focused on those mid-range, mid to higher, going into the high frequencies. Then the next one, only for this here, I never have a Pro L2 on my pre-master, but I've popped on an extra 6.6 just to push the volume up so it at least you can hear things. It's not peaking at all, but I just wanted to raise, as I said, the general volume. So that is on, but for my pre-master, I would not even have that on the chain. It's just for this video. And then the last one I use is total balance control, and I love this because I get to see exactly where everything is sitting within the mix to make sure I'm covering all the frequencies and that I've got a good balance. For example, I'll play it quickly.
Oh, cannot believe it when you stay. Don't ever go away. I'm just an ordinary man.
That's it. Okay, so let's start now. We'll dive straight into the tracks, and I'm going to start with the kick drum. We'll look at the kick, we'll then look at the bass, and then I'll bring the snare in. That is usually my triangle of setting up my groove before I add any other drum or melodic instrumentation. And generally that's where I start before I even start writing a track. I know what vibe I want to go for. So it's always setting up the kick, setting up the bass to get that groove, and then throwing in the snare if there is a snare or a clap or whatever sound is going to be that da, da. So in this instance, we are going to start with the kick, which I've got 2 going on. They're both the same sample, but the one kick is more focused on the low frequency. I've cut everything out above maybe 100 hertz. And then the second kick, which is the exact same kick, has got everything above 100 hertz accented and affected as well. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we? Okay, so this is the deep kick. I just have the sample being triggered, and I've got a Pro Q3 on, just cutting at about 150, so focusing just on the lower end. And then on my hard kick here is also a Pro Q3. You can see what I've got happening here. There is different controls for both of these. If you look here, this is my hard kick. That's in the upper registers. And then if you look this one, you can see that they are different, that there are changes. So let's play them, shall we? I'll start with the low kick, and let's do it. And then with the higher elements. Now, both of these channels are going through, they're grouped into this kick bus. So firstly, on this, I have just cut a little bit around 430, just a bell. And I haven't just done this, listen to the bass. This is something I've done once I got all the tracks together, just to make everything cut through. Then I've got Saturn 2. You see, I've got quite a bit of warm tape drive on there. From that, it's going into soothe to catch the upper frequencies, just to quell them a little bit. And that's at quite a high setting as well. And then I've got compression on there, just to glue it all together. And that's it. Okay, let's now go to the bass bus. You've got 2 basses playing. They're both the same bass generator, but just with different settings. This is my EQ curve for the mid bass, and then for the deep bass, I have got a bit of an accentuation at 137 hertz, just to push that, because I know with the RVox I'm going to compress right after, so just to push that through, and then we'll go into the main bus over here. We'll go into that processing for the bass. But let's first hear these two elements, shall we? There you have it. Now on the bass group that this is all being processed through, I have at the end of the chain a widener, just to widen it a little bit. And generally it's at the up frequencies. Before that I have my EQ. I have some compression going on there just to like really glue it all together. And then I also have a limiter at the beginning of the chain. Oh, there's a glue compressor in here as well, side chained to the kick, just to make sure the bass ducks when the kick hits. And on the limiter, I've just pushed up 1.6 dB. I enjoy playing with a limiter. Maybe it's not the way you should do it, but you know, sometimes you need to break some rules. And I actually have done that with most of my groups. There's always a limiter up first. So all together with the kick, let's do it. Okay, now we should probably talk about the effects that are on this bass. As you can see over here, I'm sending quite a bit of signal from my mid bass to my effects B channel, my send channel. And here on this channel, I have got an EQ8 just cutting at 900. And I've got a delay on. I'll just do this, get rid of that, and hit play. Take off the delay, back on. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the snare. I've got a snare, and then I also brought in a tom as well. So we'll look at both of those. So the snare, the tom, and the kick are all in a kick snare group up here. The kick itself has got some effects processing on it, so feeding into the delay and then feeding into the reverb. And my tom has a delay feeding into the delay in the sends. So first up is going to be the kick without, the snare without the kick and the bass. So the snare is and then with the tom, that's the EQ for the tom. Okay, now with that done, we can bring in the kick. All of these are being processed. These guys, the tom, the snare, and the kicks are going through the kick and snare bus. This is my EQ after the L2 with just 4 dB of gain added. And that's it. Just for those elements, the snare, the kick, and the tom. So those in conjunction with the bass sound like this. So my snare, as I said, is going through to reverb. This is my reverb chain. Once again, a very similar cutting of everything beneath 600 hertz and tempering off so I don't have too much high end on my reverb, tempering off at like 8.25K. And then the reverb itself with a good chunk of decay time. And I'll switch that on and off so you can hear the reverb in relation without the delay, because I've got both reverb and delay happening here. So let's just deal with the reverb first. And then the delay. Very subtle. Okay, my toms also go through to a delay only. So we'll hear that with the delay on and off. So turn it off for now. Let's go. And on. Very slight, but just enough. Okay, so now that we've got the bass, the kick, and the snare, we're going to now look at the top drums. So I'll start with my hi-hat closed, and I'll play it without the bass, but just with the kick and the snare so you can hear. I have this EQ with a low cut. Then we're going on to the hi-hat closed. You can see there's no EQ. Crash, no EQ. This is the dirty rim. The conga. And then of course the rise, the ride. And that's my top drums. Processing. Last on the chain is the Pro Q3. First on the chain is an L2, just pumping it up by 6.3. I like doing that, and it seems to work for me. There we go. And that's basically just taking care. This is on the top drum sub here, just taking care of all of those top drum elements and tweaking them as necessary. This is why I love Pro Q3, because in the analyzer I can really get to see what's happening with all the other signals and the other tracks. Also, you can see that I've got reverb on my hi-hat. I've got reverb on my crash, and I've got delay and reverb running on my dirty rim over here. I have some additional toms happening here as well. We'll start off with the tribal toms just so you can hear them. There is absolutely nothing on that channel, just the recording. And then I also have a tom rolls. I've got quite a few different tom rolls I use. I open up this track with the same tom roll, but you can see I've got a gate on it. I like the way it cuts in and cuts out when it hits that threshold, and it leaves a snap, and I love that. There is some automation on this purely for the beginning of the track, but this guy sounds like this. And you can see that I've got both automation happening here on the reverb and the delay, with just on the delay for the tribal toms. And then this goes through the main. These two are in their own bus. The Pro Q is preceded by the L2 with 1 dB of gain, and then my settings just to make this fit with everything else. So in context, the two of them together. Nice. So moving to an earlier portion of the track, I've got some bongos coming in here. There's quite a bit of processing on those. I'll just play them for you. Those guys are going basically, I haven't rendered this to audio. I don't like doing that in case I need to make changes. So as you can see, first off is bass mono. So I basically monoed that entire signal. So it's just sitting right in the middle. Then we're going to a Pro Q, set up as such. Auto pan, I like the way it's moving with an auto pan, which is why I went bass mono. Not bass mono, but just mono over here. And there's Soothe 2 picking up any of the resonances. You can also hear that I've got some feed going into my reverb send, and I'll play that in relation to the rest of the groove. And at this point, you can see that when I come down to the bass here, I've got a very solid, non-invasive bass line, and then in the verses, it starts to do a little bit of a melody line follow, but then back to the chorus, just very solid. And these bongos are happening in the chorus. So let's bring the bass in as well so you can hear that. Okay. And then finally for the rhythm section, I have some percussion extras going through their own bus. So the first one is a hi-hat chopper. I've got some compression on there. I just found this in arcade. I actually really enjoy arcade for little bells and whistles. So I've got that going, quite a few different samples. I'll play them through to you. Then on this channel here, I've got a limiter just pushing up 5 dB. And this all goes through a bus, a percussion extra bus with a compression, subtle compression on it, as well as a limiter pushing that up even more. So let's just jump through on this track here so you can hear what this sounds like. Starting here, I got this. And then here. And then here. And then on my hi-hat chopper, I have got these vibes, as well as these. Okay, that's it. Now that we've got the groove together, let's look at this track from the beginning through to the end as we have all the instruments coming in, and we'll focus on the melody bus now. And then after that, we'll move on to the vocal. These guys are the ones where I have the most fun. Let's get to it. So the melody bus has got my guitar bus within it, with my 3 different affected guitar tracks. Plus I've got synth horns, synth saw, staccatos, which I use in the breakdown here where it goes like really heavy, and with the bass. And then I've got a weird string component as well that comes in. So we'll start first with the guitar bus up here, and you can see that I do have additional effects going through, so we'll discuss that now. So we'll focus on the guitars first. I'll start with this track right here. Here you can see I have firstly an EQ adjusted as I've been mixing. Oopsie. Then after that I've got a gate just to cut out the noise at a certain point so that just what I want coming through is being retained. And then I have an API 550 there, just pushing a little bit of the mid and the high frequencies a bit more. And finally, I have a glue compressor sidechain to the kick just to allow the kick to punch through. So let's look at this one first, and then I'll add the next. And the next one. And on this track, I have my Pro Q3 tailored as I need it to fit in the mix. I have a gate, once again the same as the previous one, to cut whatever noise is not relevant in the mix out and just to keep the accent that I need. I have another API also with high and mid frequency boosts. And then finally I have a mids overdrive to provide that nice dirtiness which you can hear here. And then finally I have a main guitar that sears through, and that has just an EQ on it and then a distortion as well. So let's play the other two and then bring that one in. So those are my three guitars, and their bus over here has just a multi-band compressor on, capturing 500 to 5K and just giving it some slight compression in the guitars. You can also hear that I have some effects on this main one over here, so let's just solo that guy. And I have on this return here that these are, oh, by the way, yeah, on this main guitar, I have a Pro L2 pushing a little bit up, followed by a compressor, and then I've got Soothe 2 just to catch, and then the multiband, as I had said. There, the multiband. Boom. Right. So here we've got some feed happening here going to the spectral resonator. So I'll turn that on and off so you can hear what that sounds like. Off. Very nice. Next up we have the horns, which I will play now. That is just with a Pro L2 and a Pro Q3 set like that. They sound like this. And along with the guitars together. You can also see that I've got some delay feeding into my send there for the horns. Okay, next up is the synth saw, which sounds like this. Just has an EQ on it. And the second last melodic instrument will be my weird strings. I actually have absolutely nothing as far as EQ for those guys. They fit just beautifully. So let's have a listen to that. You can see that there's nothing affecting there going through the sends, no reverb or anything like that. Next are the staccatos, which play in the breakdown. And we'll give those guys a listen. You can see I've just got an EQ on them. I've got some dynamic EQ happening just to make it pop. So check that out. And you can see this is going through to my spectral resonator, as well as to my fourth return send track, which is my spectral resonator as well. But this one has got a few other things happening on. I've got a redux on this guy, just making it dirty. Then the resonator with different settings, obviously. A glue compressor against the staccato with sidechain to the staccatos, which just helps the staccato raw signal to come through. And then when it's gone, you've got this tail. I've got a Pro Q3 on there as well, which I believe is just, everything from 300 up to 11K is coming through, and then Soothe as well, just to catch whatever's weird on there, but not aggressively as such. So we'll turn that on and off, and let's see what that sounds like. We'll do them both actually, because you can see I've got a send going to the first spectral and the second spectral. So here we go. Just creates a bit of a more high-end, hollowy vibe for the fourth one, the spectral analyzer spectral resonator down here. Okay, now we're going to look at all the processing that all of these melodic instruments are running through on the main melodic bus up here. So I tried to capture the bulk of the sound in my tracking when I laid the instruments, when I recorded them. So I'm not really relying heavily on affecting the sound to make it more special. It was already recorded and tracked special. So I have minimal happening on the melodic bus other than 1 dB of gain on my Pro L, and I've got some dynamic compression pulling down at 523 and pushing up at 3K. And then, of course, in between that, I have got a sidechain compressor linked to my vocal bus just to pull that down a little bit, and all the instrumentation when the vocal is going full belt. Okay, that's the melody bus. Next up, we're doing vocals. Okay, before we go into each individual vocal track, I do have my main processing for my vocal is done on my vocal bus here. So all these vocal tracks run through that bus. So if you look here, you can see firstly I have a gate just to kill the noise floor, whatever is there, any pops, any hisses. Then I'm going on to a vocal rider, which I love, and I don't pull down, I tend to push it all up so that it is leveling before I hit my compression later on down the chain. And I like this. I just love using this guy. Then after that, I've got my saturation just to thicken up the vocal line. I've got quite a bit of drive on there, and warm tape with Fab Filters Saturn 2. Then I go into my equalization, doing my low cut, my dynamic compression around 500 hertz, and some rise at just under 10K, some boost, followed by some more equalization to tone in the vocal. And then I go to my de-esser when I've got all the richness of the sound to just pull out at a very low threshold and quite a bit of it happening, just to catch the S's, all the sibilants. Then I'm hitting my R-Vox, and I love it. I've even got a bit of a gate on there as well. So I love the R-Vox. It's my go-to for sure for vocals. And then I've got some soothe happening on that chain just to address whatever harshness there may have come through the processing. And then finally, I've got my good old L2 just giving a nice 5 dB boost to the signal before it goes into the main master. So that's that. Let's now look at the individual vocal tracks. Okay, so the first vocal I have here is a very rough vocal. There are lots of errors in it, which I like because it just provides a little bit of a human vibe. I call it Tinny Vox. You can see it's got some feed going into my delay return track. And I have got firstly auto-tune on it, and that is just to kind of a moderate retune speed. I have auto-tune on every single vocal track just to tie them all in. And then I've got Saturn with some serious drive on a clean tube just to thicken it up. And it sounds like this.
Temptation will lead me astray.
Next up is the vocal that is running through for the choruses and the verses. The first one will be the main Vox, but all of these 4 tracks here that make the composite of the main Vox are running through this bus. There's no processing here at all. You can see that I've also got no effects, no sends going. So these are all just building up, thickening up the sound. The first one is the main Vox. I've got a Pro Q after my auto-tune. I've got a Pro Q3 on. I've got a Saturn for some nice coloration there with a warm tube, quite a bit of drive. And then I've got a slight vocal compression going on as well. So let's have a look and have a listen to that soloed.
Oh, cannot believe it when you stay.
We'll now add on the swung vox so you can hear that.
Oh, cannot believe it when you stay.
The swung vox has Pro Q3 after auto tune, those settings. Then I go to my slight compression once again, and finally some widening with ozone. Next one is going to be the deep vox. So this one I'm actually going to play, and then I'll bring those two in. The deep vox has got auto tune, Pro Q3, like that, and some more compression, slight compression. So this guy.
I will not give my soul away.
Let's do it from here.
Oh, cannot believe it when you stay. Don't ever go away. I'm just an old.
And then, of course, there's a chorus over here as well, which has got your Pro Q3. Saturn for some lovely thickening. Broken tube on that one. R-Vox, thicken it up just slightly. And then Volcano with some nice effects. So let's have a listen to this guy in solo.
I will cannot believe it when you stay.
And then all of them.
Don't ever go away. I'm just an ordinary man. Oh, cannot believe it when you stay.
Next up we have the second vox, and this comes in on the third verse where the vocal style goes a little deeper, where it becomes more intimate. I wanted it to be a lot more intimate than the first two. You can see on the main grouping here there's no processing. You'll also notice that there's nothing running through to effects. The first one is the rough vox. There's just auto tune on that. Very close to the mic, sung close. The next is a wide vox where I'm just using ozone 10 to widen after the auto tune, and then I've actually messed with the wave file here. I've messed with the formant to create a bit of a messed up sound there. You can see there's no processing there either. So we'll listen to all three of these in succession. I'll just add one upon the other as we go. So here we go.
I cannot believe it when you stay. Don't ever go away. I'm just an ordinary man.
Formant.
I cannot believe it when you stay. Don't ever go away. I'm just an.
You can hear that the formant is brought down. It's only at, it's quite low. It's just to provide a little bit more texture. Right on. Now we talk about the backing vocals. The backing vocals are just two takes, one pan slightly left, one pan slightly right. On each of them, I've just got a metaflanger with a different setting, slightly different setting. I believe I have a slightly different setting. Let's see. That's that one. And that's this one. Yeah, they are different. And then on the back vox, I've got EQ'd, lots of dynamic, just catching and tailoring it to fit. But there's a redux, breaking a little bit. Pro Q3, hybrid reverb, and then all of that runs through a sidechain compressor to the second vocal, which is at the end of the track when these guys are in action. And that's just to allow them to fill the space around the second vocal of that closing portion of the track. So we can hear them. Messy. And then with the first, with the second.
Turn away from the love you bring to me each day.
And then let's listen to the whole track right now. Everything playing.
Say, can I tell away from the love you bring to me each day?
That's it. Okay, now let's look at the master chain again and bring in my bus compression with C2 catching the low end and then the next C2 catching the mid and high and gelling the whole track together. All right, so I'll first start with turning on my side chained 100 hertz and lower Pro C2, allowing the rest of the signal to pass through with a little compression, but generally it's going to hit the side, this low end. And then I'll turn the second Pro C2 on shortly after, which is letting the low end pass through, and it's only slowly ramping up at 166 hertz to catch all the frequencies sitting above. So here we go. And I think I might actually just do this from this part of the track here. Let's go like that.
Temptation will lead me astray. I will not give my soul away. Oh, cannot believe it when you stay. Don't ever go away. I'm just an ordinary man. You could be lost forever. I could not find or endeavor. I'm just an ordinary man.
And that's it, guys. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was informative. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment. If there's something that you think I should cover the next time around, let me know. If you liked it, please subscribe, click the notification bell, like the video as well. I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll be bringing you way more content like this, including song production, how I build my tracks up. But that's all for the future. See you again soon. Thanks so much.